All yours, Vanda ma'am.
Oh, um,
Sorry.
good morning and to all cargo fraternity and all friendly faces that I see on the panel. Welcome to this session. As I have already indicated, this session is about the new growth blueprint and it's about business resurgence parameters, which basically means that at a governmental level, and I'm being all seriousness when I say that, it's time for us to hear the industry as to what their plans are for moving forward from where we are. We have, in the 1 year from lockdown, almost a year, 25th of March, we will have one whole year gone by in lockdown conditions and non-normalization till date. So there is now time to take stock as to how to move ahead from the resilience, the short revivals that we have seen, the resurgences that we have seen in many quarters, the robustness of many of our operations that were taken up in new avatars, as well as the continuation of the older ones as well. It's important for us to take a deep pause at this point and see how the policy and regulatory system must be recalibrated so that we can truly unleash the potential of air cargo that we have seen in a period of crisis. It's time to look as to how we need to settle down to a much higher equilibrium post this crisis. Some of the numbers from India look pretty good. If I look at end of February results for air cargo handled, we are at about 92 to 93% of pre-COVID levels. But very importantly, I was having this discussion with Keku on the basis of the early data that we have, that out of the 29 cargo terminals that he handles, 26 of them have shown positive growth. So there are just 3 of his terminals that he needs to seriously address. And of course, this is said a little bit lightly. Overall, his the I-class airports have shown growth. Among JV airports, BIAL has shown growth. Among, again, JV airports, DIAL is showing growth in some segments. And Hyderabad is also showing growth in some segments. We need to move ahead with rigor so that when we close on 31st of March, we actually see a positive all India growth, and it's not at 92%. Normalization and growth has to be there. Full 100% and plus has to be there. So tier 2, tier 3 towns have made far more use of the crisis, is a very important conclusion to draw. Again, not every tier 2, tier 3 town did that, but airport did that, but there are some which have grown by 500%. There are equally some who've grown by 5%. So Chennai has shown overall growth among the big metros apart from Bangalore. And Kolkata has shown growth for domestic shipments, not for international shipments. So Keku, some more action needed on the Kolkata end as well. So you can't rest on your laurels. Now I just hand over the baton to you for taking the matters forward, and I will take deep notes as well. Thank you.
May I start, Dr. Ranjit?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Mr. Keku, yeah. Welcome,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vandana. Thank you, Dr. Ranjit and Bhavna, for organizing this very exciting 7th edition of the PhD Global Aviation and the Cargo Summit. I was present for a few sessions yesterday, and my one single big takeaway was that cargo is king today, especially as demonstrated during the pandemic time. However, as far as I can see, nothing can be further than the truth. To me, cargo was always and will continue to remain the king. It was just that it took a pandemic for all of us to realize the real value of what air cargo brings to the top line of the aviation as a whole and to the airlines in particular, while literally being a lifesaver in the sense of humanity and trade. And I'm sure many of my airline colleagues here would agree to me on this. In fact, I jokingly tell people that the new definition for cargo should be depend on us because we have you covered. The topic I have this morning to deliberate and discuss is rather intriguing. The air cargo's industry's new growth blueprint and business resurgence parameters, sustainability for the future, initiatives for the future. So I have a generous 2 hours or so to discuss this. And being a Saturday, I think we have the luxury of not being interjected by our normal day-to-day work. And we can have a more interactive and engaging conversation so as to get this whole blueprint organized. One other point that I'd like to bring in here at this moment is to see if we could keep our discussions more towards being a forward trajectory with a foreseeable future in mind. I think that should be the key points that probably our panelists would like to hear, our audience would like to hear as well. So with a very warm Diliwala welcome and a namaskar, I'd like to introduce my panel that features some of the brilliant minds this morning to all of you. To start, Shri Vandana Agarwal, IES, Senior Economic Advisor in the rank of Additional Secretary, Ministry of Civil Aviation. She's also known as my tough boss. Shri Keshav Tara, Chair of FIATA Institute. Stephen Verhast, I hope I got your name right, Stephen. VP Commercial Liège Airport. Ramesh Mamidara, Chief Business Officer, Adani Airport. Max Philip, Head of Cargo, Fraport. Saurabh Kumar, CEO, GMR Hyderabad Air Cargo and Logistics. Cyrus Katyala, Partner, Gina and Company and President, ACFI. Amar More, Director, Kali Logistics. Evo, Shiham, Director, Sales and Handling, North and East India. And Captain Ramanujam, CEO, Logistics Sector Skill Council. So using the limited graces I still have in my head, I suppose we're talking of a combined 480 plus years of aviation experience and wisdom in this panel. So pretty good start for people who would like to know more about what's happening in this industry. Yesterday marked the start of 75 weeks to India's 75th Independence Day. And a very good tagline as given by Madam Vandana was Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav. My understanding, the translation would be I think I'll leave it to Madam. She's on the Hindi part who will tell you more about the exact translation of this than I can.
I'll just interrupt and just say it's actually come from the government to us. So yesterday, 12th March, was the day which marks 75 weeks going forward to India's 75th Independence Day on 15th of August 2022. So we are 75 weeks short or running into it, and these 75 weeks, we hope that air cargo will go very seriously forward. And yesterday we marked it by doing a transshipment cargo, which was multimodal from Dhaka to Kolkata via Petropol on road, and then from there onwards it was another transshipment at Delhi airport and further on to Spain. So this was a double transshipment that we did, and to that extent it was new. It was also for the first time all the way to Europe on an Indian carrier. And the one thing that I was talking about a little while ago, which are the entry barriers. Here we faced a serious entry barrier that although Kolkata Airport is RA3 certified, so is Delhi Airport. But from Kolkata Airport, we could not do a direct flight to Spain on that same air carrier. But from Delhi, that air carrier is certified as ACC3. So this is, to me, a form of an entry barrier, which was so inexplicable. And going forward, Keiko, I hope that in our deliberations, we will see how to address barriers which are external to a country, policies which impact policies of another, say, block of countries, which are external to, say, an India, and how these impact our growth potential, as well as those which are within our control. I'm sorry to have taken up this moment, but I couldn't resist it.
Thank you. So moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the Indian air cargo industry is all about. There's excitement, there's innovation, there's future ready, there's bring on the challenge, and results speak for itself way of thinking and working. No more of whining on the lack of policies, vision, trade restrictions, etc. Let's focus on what we have here and now and capitalize on the same. This does not in any way ignore some very pressing issues that we still need to be solved. One of them is what Madam just brought up is restriction barriers to our growth of business from India to the world. The latest data from the World Bank predicts that next year, 2022, would be when India's GDP would be the fastest growing in the world. And this is really an exciting time for the country and in particular for the aviation industry to be in. I would go as to further saying, don't miss the load as a new version of don't miss the boat. I will give a miss to all the niceties and the luxury of giving my panelists some time for the opening remarks while diving straight into the topic and asking them some pointed questions. And I would like my panelists as well to weave in their other points as well as part of the question so that we have a very wholesome discussion and come up with some meaningful results. So let me begin by asking Amar, and if I can get also Ramesh in. If there was a huge win during the pandemic, it was all about digitalization. So is life easy for you now to convince and market what digitalization can do for the business, not just for air cargo, but for the entire supply chain? Can I personally have a date by when I don't see a paper available at all, please? And lastly, is blockchain coming soon to an airport near me or far at the horizon? Your experiences, lessons learned, and the way forward. Amar first, and then Ramesh, I'd like you to get in on this as well.
Sure.
Can you guys hear me well? Good morning, everyone.
Yes, we can, Amar. Go ahead. Amar, we're having some problems with your audio and video.
I think you're on mute, Amar. All right. So while Amar checks and corrects his audio and video, let me start with some comments as Keku asked me. Can you hear me clearly, Keku?
Yes, Ramesh, please go ahead.
So great. Thank you. So I think just 2 or 3 years ago, we were actually looking at the Indian air cargo landscape as we wanted to look at the potential for air cargo in India. I think when we were looking at it, the country was doing about 3.5 million tons across the country. And a predominant part of that was international, roughly 2.6 to 2.7 million tons. Out of the 3.5 million tons were international, the rest was domestic. So we were hopeful the domestic would grow. And we actually wanted to take a look at that number, the landscape, and see now what is in store for us 10 years from then. So 2030 was what we were looking at. We did this exercise when I was part of ACFI. Cyrus is also part of this, and we were actually doing it with KPMG at the time. And we did present to a larger audience at a seminar. So the 2030, to me, a humble growth rate of 10% year on year actually told us that we would be 12.5 million tons by the end of 2030. So that's a massive amount of tonnage looking at the current tonnage that we have in the country. But if you compare the 3.5 million tons, as all of you know, with the likes of Dubai and Singapore, these are major transshipment hubs. Dubai does about 3.5 million tons. It was doing 3.5 million tons at that point in time. And Singapore was about 2.1 million tons. And most of the hubs, the growth in these two hubs were driven by the transshipments, which we do not have in India. Some of these hubs also have the advantage of being connected to the manufacturing locations, and as a result of using the hubs as transshipment centers, have the advantage of getting the manufacturing exports out of these locations. Again, India had this disadvantage. So the 10% growth was purely based on consumption in India, a little bit of export. That actually showed us a number of 12.5 million tons. So there are two challenges here. One, when we looked at the number, we also looked at the handling capacity in India across all the airports. Now that was at about 4.5 million tons throughput capacity. And so there is a massive growth that we need to achieve at the airports in terms of improving infrastructure to cater to this 12.5 million tons that would eventually happen in the next maybe 8 or 9 years from now. So that's a challenge that we need to look at. And some of that obviously also has to happen as a result of technology, which we are discussing here, and the digitization, etc., because we need to be very, very efficient in terms of processes. For example, some of the airports currently do maybe 6 or 7 tons per square meter per year. That may not be enough. We need to definitely work on technology. We need to work on process efficiency to ensure that, as Mumbai Airport does, for example, as we do about 15 to 20 tons per square meter per year, as a result of technology, as a result of the process efficiency. Now, some of the examples that we heard from ma'am yesterday, that we actually showed the capability across all the airports, private as well as public airports during the vaccine logistics, which is currently going on. Now, some of us actually processed and delivered this cargo across all the airports in 2 or 3 minutes. No, we're not saying 20 minutes or 25 minutes or 30 minutes. All of us invariably succeeded in processing and delivering the shipments 2 to 3 minutes, which means we have the capability. We understand the processes. We understand the regulations very well. We understand the sense of urgency in the country very well. But to ensure that this actually becomes part of the processes, part of the operations across the country in the future to come, we definitely have to invest in infrastructure, we have to invest in systems, and we also have to invest in people, more importantly. So we've got all the right people to address these ingredients for the growth of air cargo on this panel. So having said that, when I look at some of the airports, how far have we reached? I think Keku also said, can we eliminate heavy bills? Now, my experience in the last 5 years is a mix of success as well as a bit of sadness, because whenever we try to implement the tools such as cargo community system, I'm sure Amar will talk about it. There are some airlines, there are some stakeholders that would actually come because they're better prepared, they're well prepared, come and adopt. And when it comes to those companies, the penetration is 100%. But there are many other airlines, many other stakeholders take very long time. For example, there's one station that we started recently. We are only about 40-50% in terms of use of the digital tools there. Because the trade is not completely prepared. And I'm talking about a tier 2 airport among the Adani airports. So there are some challenges. So when somebody talks about digitization or elimination of papers, I always go back to the basics to see where are we now. I think even the basic EDIFACT messages that the industry has implemented in the last 25, 30 years, now there are many other airports, especially tier 2, tier 3 airports that are struggling to make sure these are implemented across the entire community at the airport. I think we have to go back to the basics, make sure everybody has these basic tools in place, basic integration in place, and then look ahead, bring everybody onto the same page and put them on the fast acceleration path. I think that is very important for me. Amar, are you ready to say something?
Yeah, absolutely. So very good morning, everybody. And I'm sorry, I'm facing some issues with the internet connection. So, and the real reason is I'm not looking all that handsome today. So I've switched off my camera and I'll be speaking on just audio, right? So something, Keku, and this question I know you always ask, when will that day arrive when there won't be any paper with cargo? And honestly, we don't have the answer yet. It's very surprising that, in this day and age, we still have to deal with, so much of paper. But good thing about this whole pandemic, and, every adversity brings a big opportunity. And this pandemic did bring this opportunity, and, there have been some phenomenal advancements that have happened in technology, and I'll talk about those advancements as well in digitization, right? But I think, we are moving towards that faster. Pandemic has just kind of expedited the process. You see, globally, there are so many air cargo portals that have mushroomed over last year and a half. And I think we have, stakeholders here who have been part of, those initiatives. We see proliferation of cargo community platforms, or at least some of the digitization use cases that happened, during the pandemic times. And I'll speak of some concrete examples. And, the best thing that I like, Keku, about today's panel is, we are talking about digital infrastructure before we talk about physical infrastructure. So kudos to you that, we're starting with this subject, right? So let me just, step back a little bit and elaborate a little bit more on what do I mean by pandemic hastening the process of digitization. So let's take an example. PhD Chamber of Commerce has organized this event, right? And they issue certificates of origin. Now, this is an essential document for movement of air cargo. Now, what happens, what used to happen earlier is to get a certificate of origin, somebody has to go to the chamber's office, stand there in the queue, make the payments, get the certificate stamped, bring it back to the airport office, so on and so forth. But pandemic enforced lockdowns and cargo still had to move. So what we saw, I mean, we work with several chambers globally. What we saw is a tremendous rise in electronic issuance of certificate of origin, right? I mean, it was forced by pandemic. We saw 14 times, volumes during the pandemic times, 14 times of the pre-pandemic times volumes of certificates issued online, right? Then, in terms of community platforms, they were very restricted. I mean, Frankfurt had one, Brussels had another, Liège had one. Then there was one in Dubai, Mumbai, Delhi, a few other places. But during the pandemic times, we saw North America waking up to this reality. We saw South America waking up to this reality. And why do we need this kind of digitization? The simple reason is the same data that is, moving across this 124 copies of paper can actually be reused when you have a common platform, that an airport or a port can host. And this concept gathered a lot of steam during pandemic times because pandemic necessitated two things. One is paperless operations because the virus stays on paper for up to 72 hours. And second, social distancing, right? So to avoid traffic, to avoid congestion, if you could streamline the flow of trucks to the airport, or if you could do the documentation that happens at the airport beforehand, before your cargo reaches the airport, then actually you help people avoid, let's say, the risk of COVID-19. So this pandemic has indeed hastened the whole process of digitization, and I think that's one of the blessings that we should carry forward. Well, in my subsequent response, I'll talk about the next generation technologies like IoT, blockchain, how these technologies have impacted us. But I think, to begin with and to answer your question, we are still far away from that day when cargo will not accompany or paper will not accompany cargo. But we are clearly moving faster, towards that dream. Thank you.
Thanks, Amar. I'm still going to hold you to that question on the date, Amar. You won't escape so easily from me. So we keep meeting, we keep discussing, and I'm going to get that date out of you somehow.
Sure.
I want to bring in Ivo. Ivo, your thoughts on this whole digitization process. Lufthansa is an innovative airline. You come with years of innovation in what you do. With particular reference to digitization, I'm sure every piece of paper is adding to your weight of the aircraft and carrying of additional fuel on the aircraft. So is that a priority for Lufthansa, Ivo?
Thank you, Keiko, and big hello from my side as well. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
To directly answer your question, definitely, we have a very clear target to go 100% paperless. And you are talking about the dates. From our point of view, we would like to have this rather yesterday than tomorrow. And it is not only the weight, it is not only the contact, as mentioned by Amar also before, it is also the data quality and also the seamless information transfer that we need to have in the industry. So that's why we as an airline, together with our competitors, the other bodies in the industry, were very committed towards full digitization of the documents. And I think we started to talk about this very much on the handling part, also on the physical, in what is happening in the warehouse with the shipment. But actually, this starts already much earlier. It starts already with when does the customer, like Cyrus and Gina, when do they want to have a price information from the airline? It continues with when do you want to make the booking? How does the airline generate the price? Also, how quickly? Then to generate the booking, transfer the data already beforehand. So these are all steps that we need to keep the whole chain together. And of course, then very much it continues at the airport of origin, at the transit hubs, and at the final destination as well. So in that regard, a very important topic for us. We want to continue pushing this together with the industry. And here, of course, let me also just say a few words about Lufthansa and Lufthansa Cargo in this context here. I applaud Madame Agarwal's earlier statements towards the week 75 to reach the 75-year anniversary. I was quickly calculating here, out of these 75 years of independence, Lufthansa has been a part of the family here in India since 63 years. Yeah, so this is definitely something we are very proud of. We have been having the honor to serve this market for so many decades, and we are intending to do so in many more decades to come and be on the side of the Indian nation, of the Indian exporters. But let's not forget about the imports also that are very important for the blooming of the Indian industry here, right? So we have had a very strong financial result. Our financial year already closed 2020. Even though, of course, same like many other carriers in the world, we had a massive drop in belly capacity. We have extended the life of our freighter fleet a little bit longer, and the ones that the older aircraft that were being phasing out. But for us, it is very important to manage economic stability. I mean, one of the topics here in this panel is also sustainability, and not only sustainability in the in the ecological sense, but in the economical part as well. And for us, as a carrier who needs to generate profits, who needs to look at investments into the future, we are very focused on profit contribution. We need to be sustainable in our results, and I think last year has shown in all the crises how this very thought process of where to put which capacity and what rates to offer to our customers, what fits into our portfolio, we have managed that very well. For us, the motto is connecting people, cultures, and business on a global level. So we have achieved this, of course, in a lesser degree than in the previous year, pre-COVID, because of all the restrictions and reductions we had to go through. But nevertheless, we are confident now, again, Keiko, looking into the future, and I very much appreciate that. We are confident that we can continue with this. Yeah, we value that we have loyal customers that like to work together with us. I also look at some of the other panelists here, Max in Frankfurt, of course, but also the different airport representatives here out of India. Mr. Tanna, we had a good interaction with you also, I believe, last year during Air Cargo India. So we are wanting to jointly develop new ideas. And let me come back a bit into the topic of digitization. As I said, it's a strategic goal for us. And I think it's important that we need to see how we have the different parts of the chain working together. Sometimes I have the impression everybody is making his own little development. You mentioned earlier community system at this airport, at that airport, and so on. So we need to make sure we follow industry standards. We are hand in hand in our documentation and really also look at some of the documents that I think Amara also mentioned that before, that are still paper is going from one hand into the other one. We have stamps by the security agencies that are required, still something that on the passenger side, when I came here to India 4 years ago, that was still very normal. And then all of a sudden that all vanished. No more stamping the boarding pass, no more stamping the baggage tag on your hand luggage and so on. So we need to go in this direction for the cargo side as well. We have a ECSD initiative. We can have the dangerous goods declaration electronic. We can have customs documents on the electronic way. So there are plenty of activities besides the physical airway bill on the electronic side. So let me close here at this for now and hand back to Keiko. Thanks again for having me here in this time.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll come back to you. I have something specific to ask you the later part of this, so I'll come back to you. So let me now shift focus to two of the important European cargo-centric airports, both Frankfurt and Liège. You gentlemen have contributed in making your respective airports truly transit and transshipment hubs, and they are in a way centers of excellence. My question is simple. What advice would you give us to the airports here in India to make it from where we are to where we want to be, and even better in terms of investments and facilities, more transshipments to originate from here? What are we missing? Is there something specific that we are missing to make our airports comparable to the best in the world when it comes to transit and transshipment facilities? I want to start with Stephen and followed by Max to answer this, please. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's I'm not gonna say what you are missing. That is really not up to me. What I will say is how did we get from where we were, say, 10 years ago to where we are now, and it is indeed been a big step forward. We went from 300,000 tons handled to 1.1 million tons handled in 10 years time, and there is a lot of transshipments. I mean, we are connecting really globally air by air. So we have airlines who fly from America to Europe or from China to Europe, and then other airlines who are flying into Africa. Transshipments are going. So that's one way, but we also have air to road transshipments, road to air transshipments, and since last year, even rail to air transshipments with trains coming from China being unloaded at the airport and then part of the cargo actually flying into Africa. So transshipments on airport, but also transshipments multimodal. How do we do it? Well, I think it's already been mentioned. I can only repeat that it is a combination of infrastructure, processes, and people. And when we talk infrastructure, and I like well your start and the remark that came that the IT is also infrastructure, that is something that I 100% believe in. So what we invested in as an airport is, on the one hand, infrastructure wise, we invested in logically in the airport's main business, which is runways, aircraft parking, tarmacs, but we also invested in first line facilities, and we invested in a cloud solution that helped all the members of the cargo community, be it airlines, be it handlers, be it consignees, but also very importantly, be it government bodies, the customs, the Food and Drug Administration. They're all part of this cargo cloud, and they all accept the fact that the data they get are coming out of this cloud, which is managed and invested in by the airport. But that is, again, coming back to your question, do we still need papers? Well, if everybody accepts that electronic data will do, then we don't need papers. It's more a matter of acceptance than of technical capabilities. And then we come to processes, which is the same. Again, it's not only airport processes. It is really when we look at the airport, how to manage cargo on the airport. Actually, it is from the moment the aircraft sets wheels on the ground until the truck has left the airport area. Everything that happens in between is part of the airport process. Is it airside? Is it landside? Basically, it's all the same, because in our industry, what is important is that it's not airport to airport. Airport to airport has no value whatsoever. It is door to door that cargo moves. And so we as an airport have to make sure that we are not only focuses on what happens on airport, because if it blocks outside, it's no use either. And then the third thing is, of course, people. Training of people, finding people. The growth that we had, one of our bottlenecks has been finding talent to come and work at the airport, interesting people to come and join. So we, again, together with the government and with the university in Liège, we started the Liège Cargo Academy, which is helping, on the one hand, generating an interest with students to join. On the other hand, also looking with the cargo community, what do you need, which people do you need, which training do they need, and then very clearly focus on what is needed in this Liège Airport Academy. So it's infrastructure, combination of real estate and IT, it's processes, it's people. And I think a very important thing that is often overlooked is the fact that government bodies are an integral part of the airport community. So the only reason that Liège Airport managed to go from airport to multimodal logistics hub or the only reason we managed that the airport could also be extended into a second line and into a third line for cargo development is thanks to the fact that customs, that Food and Drug Administration buys into the idea of, okay, this is all considered airport business and the data is acceptable through the airport cloud. And the fact that customs checks it in the handling facility, airside, landside, or 15 kilometers further in a third line facility from one of the airport customers, that is, it's not about physical, it's about where is the data and what is the status of the data. So I think it's really important to bring these government bodies on board. It's really part of the development from, as I said, from airport to airport into really supply chain and multimodal logistics.
Thank you, Stephen, for that. I completely agree with you. I think the future of our business is beyond the walls of the airport. Over to you, Max. Your views, please.
Thanks for having me as well, and a good morning from Europe to everyone. It's a little bit early today for me, but not as early for you in India. But thank you for having me, of course. Stephen, you gave already a very comprehensive overview of all the different tasks that's needed to be a successful cargo airport. And likewise, it's not up to me to telling Indian airports how they do their handling and how to do improve, because having a good and very fluent cargo operation at an airport, it's always depending on local infrastructure, on local communities, on local people and qualification and local demands. So every cargo airport is a kind of an individual airport, and you couldn't take one pattern that fits every airport and every cargo operation at an airport. So furthermore, it's us to give examples how we dealt with certain situations. And to emphasize on one point is that Frankfurt Airport has to go through a very demanding month in the past year. We have to show a huge flexibility in how to handle cargo. The whole cargo system at Frankfurt Airport has to be shifted from a passenger aircraft, very normal fluent flight pattern of large passenger aircrafts using their belly capacities to bring in cargo to Frankfurt, being more a transfer hub for cargo in between all the different airports that served at Frankfurt. And from one day to another in March last year, the complete pattern, as already mentioned, has changed to a very cargo aircraft focused business at Frankfurt, and we managed to keep up the capacities at Frankfurt, so that the overall cargo volume hasn't changed. It has or even increased despite the lack of all the passenger aircraft in Frankfurt Airport. But this also meant that the handling processes has to be adapted in a very fast time, where the increasement of the number of parcels for up to 30 or 50%. We have a huge the change in the pattern of all the aircraft flight structure over the daytime or over the week time. So all the cargo handlers, all the ground handlers, even the forwarders at the airport premises had to adopt. And as already Stephen mentioned, the authorities as well as an important player to be operating and establishing a good cargo flow at an airport. So what helped us to ensure this flexibility is the cargo community system. So the digital infrastructure gives you more a picture of what is happening at your airport, which cargo is rushing in, is this import, export, is cooling needed. So with all the different players at the airport having their single databases in place, their warehouse management system like that, the cargo community system is as really a lifeline in between all the different single installations in their databases, to put them all together to get a complete picture of what is happening at the airport, to get more resilient and robust cargo flows, to get at hand all the data as a cargo community to react, even though if one warehouse has an overflow, a backlog because ramp has been damaged by a truck or something like that, and import doors had been lagged by 30%. So you can shift the loads in between the different players at an airport, and then offering the consignors and consignees a more fluent cargo airport. And this is the most important thing in my eyes for an airport, to be ready for every change, to be robust, to be resilient, to offer a continuous cargo flow. And this is more important than be faster to offer it in a half an hour faster process or something like that. That's not that important. It's more the steady flow to keep it running. And this the major clue to it, because you are limited to infrastructure, building new warehouses, buying new roller beds or buying stackers. It always takes you months. It will take you years to implement those infrastructures, those physical infrastructures. The digital infrastructure will enable you to get a more intelligent use, a more flexible use of this physical infrastructure that you will need to adopt to changes in our industry.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate your views. I was just going through data put out by WACD last night. Yeah, I'm mindful of compliances here. So just some data on week 5 to week 9, and this is just to bring out the point on how we still have these swings that are taking place. So if I just look at the weight development, and I'm not going to give any specific data, week 5 to week 6, there was a drop of 12%. Week 6 to week 7, a further drop of 5%. Week 7 to week 8, it grew by 14%. And week 8 to week 9, it further grew by 1%. Fascinating swings that are taking place within these just 5 weeks. Bad comparison, but it's like the virus playing taunt with us. You know, we have this huge wavy business going on. But let me get a little deeper into this conversation, and I want to bring back Saurabh and Ivo in this. A lot of similarities, big airports, big airlines. Are we investing? We talked about investment in processes, we talked about investment in digitization, etc. Are we investing in the future of this business? Are we investing in quality of what we are doing? Are we missing something here where we are probably too focused on being the paperless part of our business, etc.? I just want to get into that. I mean, for the lack of repeating what I said earlier, I'm in this business for 34 years. Most of the processes that I started my career with are still there. In fact, the 747, which I started with, is still around. Are we as an industry future-proofing ourselves and getting ready for a more qualitative, more all-inclusive, comprehensive way forward? Saurabh, your views first, and then I'd like to have Ivo on this other.
Yeah, Keku, hope I'm audible.
Yes, please go ahead.
So, Keku, I think it's a great question. It's a very future-looking question, and I'll start from what Ramesh mentioned about we all set to reaching about 12 million in 2030, and I also want to remind ourselves that in one of the discussions earlier, Vanna ma'am also spoke about the 10 million that we all have to, you, me, and all of us. She gave all of us a good target. I don't forget that. So, why I'm stitching the dots, and we earlier in the discussion, we discussed about a very important topic of transshipment. And we said that, yes, India is generating a lot of cargo. But yes, are we handling a lot of cargo? I think there are two similar questions, but yes, there is a gap between those two, if we put the definition of transshipment. And then I want to come to the main point which you have asked. Are we future-proofing ourselves? When we say future-proofing ourselves, there are 2-3 major dimensions of it. The first dimension is in terms of our strategy. From an air cargo perspective, from an Indian air cargo perspective, how do we see the growth? Are we seeing the growth only organic? Are we seeing the growth only coming from the top major airports? Are we only going to focus on the traditional commodities? Are we strengthening the airlines which can act as a hub, facilitate the emergence of India and major cities in India as an air cargo hub? I think this is one set of questions which is relating to the strategy bit. The second point from a future proofing is in terms of adoption of technology. And I should say that, yes, we have been fairly content for last 2-3 decades, but I think that has changed, and there are a lot of things which our friend Amar is going to say. But in the last 1 year, I think the disruption has happened in the true sense that, yes, we all have decided and we all have moved, not one, but multiple steps in the direction of utilizing technology, not alone for, in making our processes touchless or paperless, but also, looking at other avenues of improving the operational aspects concerning automation and productivity. Those all of us have started thinking on those lines that, yes, unless we move ahead from 6-7 metric tons per square meter, or you can also think this in terms of the number of movements per hour. How ports have evolved. Also in terms of the manpower productivity, in terms of the tonnage that we handle. I think that's a journey that we have all started. I would not say that we are slow, but in a span of about 2 to 4 years, we would have made ourselves enough progress to in the direction of future proofing. So I think these are two major aspects, and the third important aspect of future proofing is in terms of infrastructure. Ramesh mentioned about our current infrastructure and the current traffic, but given the way aviation is growing in our country, considering the number of smaller airports and the airstrips that are being utilized or being planned to be utilized, the future master plan of growing air cargo in the greenfield airports like Hyderabad and also the brownfield airports, like Chennai, Bombay, and Delhi, and Delhi, yes, a mix of both, is working towards increasing their capacity from whatever they are to at least handling 2 to 3 times of it. Are the 3 major pillars of future proofing. And I think, Keiko, I should say all the 3 in terms of strategy, there are right moves being done by the government, right moves being done by the airport operators and the cargo terminal, and the stakeholders are also coming together. The technology is in the right space. And I've also said about the infrastructure plan, it's just a matter of time, people join, come out of this COVID, put together their finances and, start expanding to create that capacity. So my view strongly, I feel that we are moving in the right direction with all stakeholders in sync.
Thanks, Saurabh. Ivo, your 2 cents on this as well, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keiko, for giving me another opportunity here. Certainly, when we talk about the future, we have to ask ourselves, what is the future, right? If you would have gone back 1 year, 2 years ago and asked us then what is the future, we would have had a completely different view on what we are looking at now with the experience of the last 12 months. So certainly, I think the name of the game here is flexibility. How can we be flexible in our approach? How can we make sure that we quickly react on the different demands? And of course, in the case of the airline, also, how can we move our capacity? I think Max had phrased it quite nicely earlier with the shift from the typical belly passenger aircraft belly usage for cargo into complete different solutions that we needed to look at on a short notice. And this may be something that can continue for quite a while in the future. I mean, when we look at the predictions of the passenger traffic to grow again, I see here, of course, maybe within certain areas, domestically in India, we already mentioned, but also domestically in the EU or domestically in the US, there we already see the growth again coming back to original matters. But how it is with international travel from India to Germany, from the Far East from Northern Asia to US. So there is still a lot of question marks in the next couple of months. So we have to be flexible here. And I see it that the communication between the stakeholders is key. I go back to and would like to highlight also yesterday's statements of Madame Agarwal, but as well as the Honorable Secretary Carola, mentioning the achievements of the Indian carriers, but together also with the foreign carriers. I think it's important that we see how can we link this together. How can we make sure it's not only one nation against another one or one carrier against another one, but how can we cooperate and partner with each other? This is really the key. And I think the communication amongst the stakeholders is one of the most important parts. And we very much, as Lufthansa, we very much would like to further accommodate the topic of intermodal freight. We have sea, rail, road towards air. We have here in India domestic connections, a lot of domestic connections, and how to link this with the international traffic. I think at the moment it really makes sense to have usage of hub and spoke operation and make use of that not only on the passenger side but also on the cargo side. And there I think the Indian airports and the processes also on the security side we need to upgrade. We need to be looking at how can we bring these transshipments closer to the reality here in the day-by-day business. Yeah. So this would be my 2 cents to it. And again, I think it needs to be something where the overall aim is always how can the Indian market be served? How can the Indian customers grow together with the different capacities coming in from foreign carriers, from international airlines, together with the Indian carriers, and where we can help each other, where we can learn from each other, and these kind of discussions I think are also very helpful to create an understanding for each other. That would be my 2 cents on for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Ivo. This is getting very fascinating, and I hope our viewers are getting energized by what they hear. So moving on, let me bring in the 2 solvers of the Indian cargo industry, Cyrus Katgara and Keshav Tanna, both of whose organizations have helped shape the air cargo and logistics industry in India for generations, and for whom many individuals have even branched out and started their own companies. So I want to flash back to the year 2008, the year that sends me the creeps for 2 reasons. One was the financial crisis that happened, and also the fuel crisis that happened. And one of the very interesting takeaways that I always keep in mind was that those of us who in the industry invested during these crises came out far more stronger post the crisis and were able to accelerate their business at a far greater level than those who balked under the crisis, who came under pressure in the crisis and sort of gave up. So, there's a saying that goes, don't ever waste a good crisis. My question, therefore, to both Keshavji and to Cyrus is, as for your companies individually and as for the Indian air freight industry in total, have we used this crisis, if I may use that word, to have invested, grown, expanded, and therefore taken advantage of the situation that we are in? First Cyrus and then Keshav, please. Cyrus, over to you.
Yeah, Keku, thank you. Actually, today what is happening is that today I just heard all these eminent speakers, and one point is for sure, everybody wants to go digital, paperless. I heard Ramesh, then Aman More, Ivo, and all the other panelists also. Everybody thinks of going paperless. But you know what? Why is it taking it so long? And in Keku, like you said, you've been here for 34 years. I'm a little junior to you. I've been here for 30 years. And it looks like it's never going to happen because we keep asking for paper. Unless we guys say no paper, then it's going to work. Everybody somewhere slips in paper. The custom says, I don't want paper, but you keep paper, you file it when I want the paper. So obviously we have, as a forwarder, has to keep all the paper. Then in case of an airline, no one wants paper, but then you need a declaration, signed declaration. Again, that's a paper. So, where is this paper, our paper attitude, this declaration, annexures, unless this all goes, we are not going to get paper. I know Amar More is going to be real happy to hear what I'm saying. It also compliments him because unless you guys, now, Bhavna, I'm speaking at a PhD forum. And I'm going to take the risk of asking your exporters, why do they want paper? If I do one export shipment, I need to give 10 backup documents. Maybe the logistics manager doesn't want the paper, but who wants the paper? The guy at the accounts. He needs airway bill, he needs this document, he needs that document just to pass one bill. Again, you ask me for all the paper, redo all the paper, make the files, submit it to the bills. So again, these are small examples of how we are not going to go paperless. Till we all say no paper, it's not going to happen. So Keiko, you had one slogan, and I guess your slogan was, what was it? Depend on us and we have you covered. I think now the new slogan would be, Bhavla, you also implement this here. Say no to paper. That's all. Make it simple and say no to paper. Unless we guys start saying no to paper, it's not going to happen. Everyone wants to cover himself with some paper or the other. But we'll say, yes, we don't want paper. We want environment clean. We want everything. But when it's coming to themselves, we just go paper and paper crazy. Okay, that's my small take on going paperless, which is my favorite subject. I already had part of my thing, but I got excited now, all this paper thing going around. Whilst the whole world had stopped working, air cargo industry worked 24 into 7. Air cargo industry saved the world with all the transportations of vaccine, thanks to the airlines, the airport operators, freight forwarders, custom brokers, bonded truckers, express operators, whoever is in part of the gambit, who did the exports and the import of this thing. So air cargo, let's not play the importance of air cargo. It's such an important thing. And we saw that during the virus, it was air cargo that actually really saved the world. Today, it's air cargo is all about collaboration. And COVID brought the whole collaboration together. Everyone came together during the COVID period and everyone worked towards this thing. It would not have happened if the whole industry didn't come together. Air cargo capacity worldwide, when you take, is only 1%. 90% moved by ocean, 9% moved by air. So again, I'm going to give a good commercial on air cargo, why it is so good, why it is so important, and why air cargo needs to give the full respect it deserves. Air cargo is not getting now, of course, with Vandana madam and this whole ministry, air cargo has suddenly taken such a huge impact. Of course, I call Vandana, she's taken some air cargo afim or something like that because this is got into her blood. And yeah, it's all about, and air cargo again, there is only one capacity of worldwide. And you say it's air cargo is expensive. No, air cargo is not expensive because the cost of logistics in India, please, Bhavna, this again for your viewers to see. I'm going to repeat this. 14% is the cost of logistics in India. But air cargo, it is only 1 to 8% cost of logistics by air because the commodities that move by air are always premium commodities. And whether you take an Apple, who cost of logistics probably would less than 1%, or you take Zara at the other end, taking the most reasonable cargo, they both buy only air cargo, or probably 90% of the shipments are on air cargo. So air cargo is a part of supply chain. It's not a punitive cargo or anything like that. Air cargo again is definitely needs to be. This is a slight commercial on air cargo. It's speed to market. It's a zero inventory cost, low interest cost, and less damage or risk for cargo, which is so important for all the people. You make all your goods and then want to minimize your risks. The only way to minimize the risk again is air cargo. ACFI is one of the bodies in air cargo which is got all the stakeholders together, and we are now in the eighth year of ACFI, where all the stakeholders are forming the airlines, the airport operators, the airports, freight forwarders, express, custom brokers, truckers, also the chambers of commerce like PhD, very active members of ACFI. And thanks to Bhavna and team, really PhD and ACFI have got on really like a house on fire. We support each other for everything. I guess I have nothing more to say now. Keku, you can hand it over to the other panelist, and I may have answered your question. I may not have answered your question, but finally, I think I'm going to end by saying again, let's say no to paper. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cyrus. Keshevji, over to you. Keshevji, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Am I audible now? Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Thank you, PhD, for having us here. Keku for having me on this webinar, and yeah, it's all now webinars. It's not seminars any longer. So thank you. And yes, you mentioned 2008, but Keku, I think what we went through was nothing compared to 2008. Yes, 2008 was a commercial crisis, no doubt, 2008, 9, whatever. But I think what we went through and what we are still going through is nothing compared to that. And if air cargo, being one of the worst hit industries, businesses during this crisis and pandemic, could come out of it the way it has come out, and I think it's brilliant the way it has come out. And I can hear, say, at least as far as India goes, and believe me, I've been talking to quite a few airports, quite a few countries, because I have the fortune of, I'm fortunate enough to be on the FIATA board of the Air Freight Institute. And all other countries are not doing what we are doing. I mean, we are really there. We are an example to follow. And I'm not only talking of vaccines, and I'm not only talking of medical supplies, etc., but even in terms of commercial cargo, I think we've done and come out of this far better than the many parts of the world. So, and again, thank you to ma'am, and thank you to the leadership that we have here. That we are where we are, and the world is looking at us. I mean, I know so many of my international colleagues who are still not vaccinated. Yes, so there's something to go about and learn from that. Yes, in a crisis, it's important how we get out of it. And it's not a small crisis, because virtually belly capacities disappeared overnight. And what did India do? We entered into the bubble agreements, flight agreements with so many countries. And we were quick enough to do that, because had we not done that, I think we would be where, the other countries perhaps are, and looking at you scratch my back, I scratch yours, all these funny things. But no, we put all that behind us, and we went ahead. And that's the resilience which has perhaps paid off as far as we are concerned. So yes, I think we did well in terms of coming out of the crisis. We're not still out of it. I think domestically, we are, ma'am, we would be far more out of it than internationally, perhaps. Short-haul flights are coming out quicker than long-haul flights, because passenger travel is still restricted. We are all cargo people on this webinar here, so we love our cargo, and we hate to see our piece of cargo getting offloaded for passenger baggage, but unfortunately that's what used to happen in the past. So long as it's not our baggage, we really got very agitated but now that same piece of baggage is traveling on a business class seat. So things change, yes, and it's come around that cargo is now a revenue stream. What used to be, and I've got airline colleagues here who will correct me if I'm wrong, but cargo used to be a revenue stream of maybe 10 or 15% on airline revenues. And during this pandemic, we are at perhaps 1/3 of those revenues. So to the airlines revenue stream, that's my understanding. I could be corrected by the experts here. Digitization, it's going to be, so as far as FIATA goes also, that's one of our tasks. We've created a task force in digitalization going ahead, because I think had it not been for that, does anyone really think we would have gotten out of this crisis? I mean, Indian customs is faceless today. The taxation department is faceless today. But yes, it's still a lot needs to be done today in that. And Cyrus is absolutely right when he says that. And why is that? Because I think it's still fragmented. And here I talk of India. Somebody spoke of community systems. So where are we in terms of community systems? Because I can understand one size cannot fit all, right? Because data sharing, data exchange is still very challenging. But we need some form of standardization to ensure that there is some seamless data transfer and collaboration between the various stakeholders. We are all here. All the stakeholders are more or less here. And this would avoid the multiplicity on diverse platforms, because the airline is using one platform, the ground handling is using one platform, and everybody requires us to work as per their requirements, which I think can be solved by some kind of a community platform. And Amar is here. He knows what I'm talking about. E-Airway, I mean, the airlines, I think, our achieved target would be 65, 70%, something close to that globally. But so the airlines perhaps don't need it, but can the ground handlers say that perhaps they don't need that document? I would be a little shy on that, because it's needed for a security reason. A security declaration is needed for security reasons. Now, globally, you have what is called an recommended practice 1690, which is well accepted as a electronic security declaration. But here, I'm required to give one physically. So this is where I'm coming in support of Cyrus, that yes, we do need to look at things holistically and say that if we are going to put below my signature that, save a tree, I should be trying to save a tree. So that's as far as digitization goes. But I think we've come a long way, and as forwarders, I'm proud to say that we are perhaps ahead than some of our colleagues in terms of electronic data transfer, in terms of investments. You mentioned what kind of investments. I'm glad that 2008-9 happened, because in every crisis there's something to learn from. Like you said, you put it better than me, but yeah. So at that point in time, a lot of us had invested in digitalization, because infrastructure was slow in coming. Yes, in India it took its time, and I mean, we can't deny that it's still physical infrastructure. So what was the alternative? The alternative was digital infrastructure. So not alternative, but that's where we could at least put our hand in our pockets and go ahead and say that, okay, let's try and do this. And manpower, physical interchange could be eradicated as much as possible. So yes, I think those are the situations which I would like to put on and discuss further if we can go ahead. But I think it's taught us a lot. The COVID-19 has taught us a lot. We talk about vaccines, maybe we don't. I don't know if it's there on the agenda today, but that's where India has really scored. So even in transport, and I mean in transportation as well, not only in the vaccine, as far as the development of vaccines go, but even in the transportation of vaccines. So with that, thank you, Keku. Back to you.
Thank you, Keshav. I believe, ma'am, you had a point to comment at the moment. Please to comment before I proceed further.
I'm extremely enlivened to hear about going paperless and going digital. My first question would be that when we are talking about going paperless in a multimodal system, because I have heard today all of you say it's no longer about airport to airport, it's door to door. So multimodality is a given for us, right? And it's multimodality not just in the originating country, but it's also multimodality in whatever destination country it is, if it's international transport. So two things. One, while in India, we are working on a unified logistics interface platform or a national logistics portal, which could address the issues of this multimodality, the combined with going paperless, provided we have one unified code for the different modes of transportation, and Amar can guide us more on that as well, and so can the others. At an international level, are we ready to go digital? We've tried it in India with going with airport to airport, digital freight corridors. Are we ready at an international community level to tell one of the FIATA, TIACA, IATA, you name it, any of the bodies who are making our life so costly, as I said earlier, can they please work and give us a system which improves lives, reduces costs, because that's the only thing that when we as regulators are working, my first thought is, how do I reduce costs? So can we have the whole international community come to one and develop that, just as we in India are trying to put it all together? That's my first thought. The second thought is, and Cyrus and Keshav and Keku and Saurabh, etc., Ramesh would understand the pain with which I'm saying this, is that when we first started with online booking portals, and we developed two of them, Amar developed one, at Dial we developed yet another one through Hans Informatics. The basic premise that I had at that time was, you get your booking online. Today, the question that Cyrus asked, exporters, please don't ask me for papers. I'm saying, all of you in the supply chain, just do your bookings online. These can be firewalled so that your price sensitive information is kept with you. Your ability to book and to transact with the different players is there. Can we resurrect that? Or was that idea, which came 3 years ago, still too much advanced? Can we use this crisis to bring that back forward? Because when we put our first step, which is the booking step at a digital level, I believe the heart and mind will follow. Everything else will follow. That's one thought. I got one other question, which is again putting together the pieces that all of you have said. I hear very well that flexibility and giving consideration to local needs, which is customization of the need fulfillment, is the need of the hour. Yes, it is. Does that mean that as we go from 3.5 million metric tons to 10 million metric tons by 2026 and to 12.5 million metric tons by 2030, those targets don't change for all of you guys, that we don't have to be physical investment intensive? What do I mean by that? Because our different regions from where the growth propulsion is coming, somewhere it may be that we are doing drones, using drones to lift cargo. Somewhere we are using fixed wing. Somewhere we are using rotary wing. Somewhere we are using a truck. Somewhere we are using inland waterways. Somewhere we are using even the sea or the coastal connectivity that we have to pick up cargo and to book it and to move it. Does that mean we have to be physical infrastructure light, It's not necessary for every airport to have all the investments that are needed. We can be off airport in our investments as well. Vipin, I don't want you to answer this question, mind you. That's one thought. And I'm not hinting only towards AFSs. I'm thinking much more because I'm thinking multimodal here. Is that the way to go? I also said this, I mean, I'm just going to add a thought here, is that when we were looking at the vaccine movement and the requirement of huge amount of cold storage, we were told, when we did the assessment of all our airports, and the bigger worry was the I-class airports, which are smaller airports where the cold chain facilities are not that geared to pharma. Even then, we realized that we could use mobile or temporary structures, which were plug and play structures. Is this the kind of flexible regime that we need to move towards going forward? Is that the policy direction that the government must keep in mind? On these two questions, who goes first?
Can I ask Amar, would you like to give a little brief on what Madam has asked at the moment before I proceed to bring in Captain Ramanuja?
Sure. So ma'am,
and then one more thing, I've not let the airlines go, by the way, Ivo, you're not let off the hook, because while that's my third question. Sorry. That's my third question. I'm getting old, so I tend to forget as well. There is a mention that partnerships are vital. If I look at the partnerships of Indian Airlines with foreign airlines, it's a dismal record. If I look at how Indian Airlines carrying India-based cargo is concerned, it's a dismal record, even when Jet Airways was there, even when Air India was in full bloom and our capacity was in good earnest. It's a dismal record. I appreciate what you said, and I would never be the one to curtail growth of whichever carrier is able to carry the best. But let there be no protectionism at the other end, which is something which we are facing. And I promise you, this is not an idle word that I have used. It's with a heavy heart that we have used it. India, which opened itself to the world through an open sky policy, is today forced to look as to, is all of India's growth meant only to be serviced from outside? Is there no role for an India in the incremental growth that we are going for? Is there no such role? When I see the list of CEIV and whatever the vaccine programs that are being made internationally, I don't see, even though India is supplying 60% of the vaccines to the world, has been supplying traditionally, the role played by Indian Airlines has been dismal. And I'm saying this particularly after checking for 2 whole months of vaccine movements, whether our local systems, including our freight forwarders, are able to meet the requirements of temperature integrity and also the proficiencies of 2 minutes, 3 minutes. If you were to see my mobile phone on the vaccine operations group control room that we have, headed by Keku, every flight, advance information Every time the time is given, truck dock time at origin airport, unloading, loading onto the flight, nothing more than 2 minutes, 3 minutes, even for cargo, which is so many packets of 90 pack boxes or more. So somewhere we have done it right. And this is done without extra investment. This is done with industry standards, which are today ingrained in the Indian air cargo system. I want to ask, is there a need to add entry barriers and cost parameters to our system? Does Africa, does rest of Asia, does Latin America, do they deserve these standards where they are already excluded ab initio from serving? That's my third question. So please, I will not have a fourth question as yet.
Okay, so we'll take both the questions. First, I will ask Amar, would you like to very, very quickly, briefly touch a point on having an all-inclusive, let's say, strategy going forward, where we could have everybody as part of the same supply chain or the ecosystem, whichever you want to call it, on the same page? Is that a possible reality or not?
So first of all, ma'am, thank you so much for these questions. And, Keku, to answer your question, one monolithic global platform, I think it's very difficult, and this is my personal view. I think the industry organizations can set up standards. In fact, I head the cross-border management domain at United Nations now, and we are working on creating standards for digital corridors. Okay, India was a pioneer in that sense, where we developed the first digital corridor with Netherlands. And when we wanted to look around what are the standards for creating digital corridors between the two countries, there were none. So at the United Nations level, now we have defined a project for defining this or creating the standards for creating digital corridors between two airports, to ports, to countries, so on and so forth. But one monolithic platform, I don't think, that will work, because each place has its own idiosyncrasies. So if you develop something which is monolithic, it may not be optimal at the community level to solve communities' problems. However, all these associations, TIACA, IATA, FIATA, United Nations, what they can do is they can create standards and they can proliferate standards. IATA has already come up with a concept of one record, and it is being adopted, in several places. In fact, some of the early communities that we developed, digital communities, are on the principle of one record. Data that is created once need not be re-entered by other parties in the supply chain, right? So now let me just answer ma'am's other two questions. So, ma'am, your question on the e-booking portals that we launched in India 3 years back, those were indeed ahead of times, right? And I think Ivory is part of Lufthansa, and they own one such portal, and which is doing exceedingly well now. And during the pandemic times, I think the adoption picked up big time. I mean, the founder of that portal is a very good friend of mine. And I think, as they say, when you have crisis, you have opportunities. So all these electronic bookings increase tremendously during the pandemic times, because there were no feet on the street in terms of salespeople, and people were looking for rates, capacity was constrained, so on and so forth. So clearly the time is now. I mean, now there are more than one. There are 3, 4, 5, such portals existing. Your second question on multimodal transport. Well, air cargo by its very nature is multimodal, because you always have trucks feeding the cargo into the airport. So you have that road mode of transport. You have bonded trucks moving cargo, to the several destinations. And to handle such multimodality, you have digital platforms. In fact, we are working in North America with several airports, and obviously India, I consider much ahead when it comes to community level digitization. Period. I mean, we operate in 30 countries. I have seen digital scenarios in several countries, but the kind of automation that has happened, community level integration, where you have chambers of commerce, you have the authorities, you have the airlines, everyone onto the common platform. Well, that's something that is facilitated. Multimodality is facilitated through technology. I'll give you an example. For example, today, if the truckers have to, bring that cargo in the truck and then come with 10 different documents, which are then handed over at the ground handler's facility, would it be automated? Of course. If all of this information is fed into what Stephen calls as a data cloud, or we call as community platforms, then this information is already there, at the air cargo terminals. All that the truckers would need is a QR code on his mobile. Okay. And once that QR code is scanned, the entire horoscope of the shipment, or, all those documents that are already fed in, are already made visible to the checkpoints, wherever they need to be checked. So technology can definitely facilitate this whole multimodality. I was, as I said, air cargo is quite, I mean, we're quite used to working with the road mode of transport, because truckers all the time feed cargo to the airport, right? There are movements happening. We are working in Middle East on sea air integration, but those are things, that let's say that are a little ahead of time. Let's just look at, and I'll take the phrase of a politician. How do we make air cargo great again? Okay, and that's because clearly everybody says that there is still a lot of paper. How do we use technology to make cargo great again? Well, number one, you can use technology to make the airport safer. So if your technology can intimate the airports in advance, what is coming, who is bringing all of that cargo, and in a digital fashion, which removes paper and this whole possibility of getting COVID-19, then you make the airport or air cargo safer. Second thing that technology can do is make air cargo sustainable. Now this is very important. Now in India, I think most of us know that we have several copies of gate passes printed, as Cyrus have mentioned. You need it for so many other purposes, right? You still have, in spite of e-airway bill, you still have up to 3 to 4 copies of airway bills, master airway bills, and then house airway bills. Cargo security declaration. You have a couple of copies of that. I mean, we just counted. If you take an airport like Mumbai or Delhi, where you would have 4,000 shipments a day, and if you look at these small copies of paper, which amount to around 20, and these will be around 20 anywhere in the world, not just India. It is about 80,000 copies of paper, and I'm just assuming one document is one copy. If there are shipping bills which run in like 24 copies itself. 80,000 copies of paper, multiply that by 300, you have 24 million copies of paper. You know what that tantamounts to? It is 1,500 trees. Okay. So as they say, people who solve small problems or pay attention to smaller details can solve very complex problems. And it's just the same, so each of these small copies of paper, and when we investigated, in several countries, most of the management or most of the people, they don't need it. It's just legacy. It just exists. So if we just get into these details, and if we can just kind of look at how do we replace this 1,500 trees, or save 1,500 trees per airport. I'm talking about one airport. So if you use technology, you can make the world much more sustainable. Uh, Forget about those, the trucks start and stop and all those waiting time for perishable trucks where they have to keep the engine on, etc., etc. Carbon emissions, you can absolutely reduce that drastically. You can address truck congestion. Why does truck congestion happen? Let's look at core principles. Trucks arrive at the same time, because they arrive around the same time when the flight is supposed to depart or flight is supposed to arrive. Most of the documentation happens at the airport, so terminal charges payments, or document submission, waiting, etc., happens at the airport. And when one truck has stopped for that documentation, there is a queue piling up behind that truck, right? Third thing, people don't have visibility whether their cargo is ready, for pickup or delivery. So if you use technology, you can solve all of these problems. You can streamline the flow of trucks, slots can be booked and trucks can arrive at that time. A lot of paperwork that happens at the airport could be done through the cloud, so that data reaches the airport before the cargo reaches. And that's how you eliminate the waiting time for trucks. And when you have transparency, when you have mobile apps on which people can see if their cargo is ready for pickup or delivery, you don't have this kind of congestions of waiting time. So by doing this, you can also do more with less. Mumbai airport, for that matter, is a global case study for a reason. It's a very small airport, very constrained airport. It handles close to 1 million tons of cargo. And some of the reasons why it happens is because some of these processes are already digitized, right? So making cargo great again is making it more sustainable, more secure, doing more with less, and clearly making it more transparent. You could give, ma'am, you spoke about, connecting two different airports. That's giving end-to-end visibility. When you create communities, these are local communities which connect the, local ecosystem. But when you connect it using blockchain or other technologies with global airports, you have end-to-end visibility. So I think, we all talk about digitization, but, instead of very high level talk, if we could just enter into and just look at in our own office, what is that unnecessary paper that is getting generated, and just look at a mechanism to eliminate it. I think we have the best government support that we could have ever had in the current times, with, Vandana ma'am leading the whole, cargo initiative. And if you could have some concrete recommendations, I think, we are there. Pandemic has pushed us towards it. We are there. So, ma'am, to summarize, to answer your questions, yes, 3 years back, air cargo booking portals were not in vogue. The time is now. For multimodality, obviously, there could be technology which could help, the facilitation of multimodal shipments. You could move shipments just based on a QR code, if you have the right kind of cloud infrastructure in place. And yeah, I mean, all these other things that we spoke about around technology can really help us make air cargo great again. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Amar. Ivo, I'll come to you on the questions that ma'am has raised, and your views on that, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know the time is already running short, so I try to keep short and crisp there on that. Also, thank you very much on your open statements there, and then I appreciate to take this discussion forward, of course, also together with other carriers. I mean, since I can only talk as a representative of the Lufthansa airline group, I mean, we first of all, we stand for, besides our quality aspects and our reliability and long history, we stand for fair market competition, governance, and we are inviting all parties to develop this new normal, right? I mean, you spoke about partnerships, picking up on my previous statements. When I look back, the partnerships already have been there since many years, right? It started on the passenger side already more than 2 decades ago, when Lufthansa was on the forefront to start the Star Alliance partnership, and along with it, some years later, Lufthansa invited Air India also to become a member of this Star Alliance partnership. So just as one example, how things have been pushed and try to and have these partnerships together. And even here in India, Lufthansa Airlines as well as Lufthansa Cargo also, we did form our own joint ventures here in India already years ago, decades ago, which eventually then did not work out. So this had to be stopped again. But that shows, I mean, that we have a history also of trying to see how can we develop some new ideas. Yeah? And what we on a global level as Lufthansa Cargo have done over the past 5 years is create cargo joint ventures. Yeah, so of course, looking there at reliable and professional partners at different parts of the world where we see an opportunity, and certainly India, the subcontinent, South Asia, is one of those markets. But so far we were not successful in creating a partnership there. So that is definitely something to tackle over the next years to come. And I wanted to also quickly speak about open sky policy. You had mentioned that also about negative experience, or let's say challenges that you have seen from that in the past. And we stand for open sky policy very much as an important point in the global business. Yeah, we do not want to be as a company. We don't want to be protected by anybody. We stand towards our competitors, and the customer in the end has the choice of the services that are being offered, and the price, of course, that is also behind it. So we feel as a long-term sustainable solution, open sky certainly is the future, and we would like to see that this with India can also continue in a progressive way. I also listened yesterday to His Excellency the Ambassador of the UAE, who was talking and mentioning the bilateral air service agreement between UAE and India, and the bubble agreement, of course, that we have all seen developed by the Indian government as a forefront new idea last year. Yeah. So definitely we need to see how we can return to the open sky policies, and of course it needs to be discussed. How can that mean that all players, all participants in this industry can have a fair access to the markets, yeah? And this depends, from my point of view, on services, on processes, on professionalism, and in the end also on sustainable financial practices. Yeah? So this is what we are trying to do and offer to our customers. One last quick thing I wanted to mention regarding digitization and all that discussion about paper and so on. For me, this is also a topic of the skill set, and I think we have a colleague here in the panel who has maybe will give us some more enlightenment also about skill, because for me it is also down to the shop floor, down in the warehouse. We need to also manage to train the people and embrace digital technology. It doesn't have to be only on the management level. It will not work out like that on a regulatory level. We need to bring it down to the shop floor. We need to see how we can bring devices also down to the shop floor, and which is, I think, a common practice in other airports. When I look here towards Liège and Frankfurt, maybe you can share something there as well. As this is, I think, some further step where we can further develop and also rise all the staff on the ground also to these new excitement. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I have a little bad connection. So thanks for that, Ivo. Kevsha, if you wanted to come in very quickly to give a forwarder's perspective on the 3 points that ma'am had asked for.
Yes, thank you, Keiko. I think, ma'am, you mentioned a global platform, for want of a better word, something like that. But that's going to be a little difficult, I think. And I think Amar answered that question, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. It's going to be extremely challenging. Setting of standards, yes, that's possible. But a global platform, I think, would be perhaps, again, like we said, maybe a little ahead of our time. I don't know, in time to come, maybe. As far as a booking platform goes, ma'am, we are already, why would I not be party to that? Because as far as a booking platform goes, I'm booking on various airlines, different platforms, as required by the airline. So for me, a common booking platform, perhaps with all the commercials firewalled, we would have no problem with that. But I think there would be a challenge from the airline side. Perhaps I don't know. I leave it for them to answer. But for that matter, we have to get on to every airline's platform to make a e-booking differently. And it's more or less everybody's on e-booking these days. So for me, it would be, I think, an acceptable situation. And I think the last one was regarding multimodal platform. But as far as forwarders, and I can say that for a lot of us, ma'am, that is an entry level at which, if we want to do business, we better have a multimodal level transparency in our organizations, because a buyer sitting in Paris or in London would like to know when a shipment is originated from a Nasik in India, whether my truck has reached there, and it's all transparent. So if I am not able to give him access to my system sitting somewhere in Europe or somewhere in USA, he doesn't want to do business with me. So I'm already multimodal, transparent on my system as a forwarder. So I think that's something which is already on as far as privately we are concerned. As far as something which goes on a community system level, I don't know how that would work, because again, there are so many commercials involved. But as far as many of us forwarders go, and Cyrus would be the same, a lot of consignees want to see where their goods, whether they're being picked up, what time they're being picked up, how they are carted, what time they are being examined. And they are all seeing this through our own systems, through, of course, password login. So that's already perhaps prevalent. With those few words, Keku, I give it back to you. So, yeah.
Thank you, Keshav. So before I come to ma'am for her final comments, I have to ask Captain Ramanujam, when we began, at least for those of us in the late 80s, the words logistics, sector, skill, and council never came across as in one sentence ever. Simple question for you, Captain, is are we skilling in terms of methodology going to be employment focused, innovation focused, or a combination of both? Given that, as you probably heard in the last over close to 2 hours now, what you've heard about the immense challenges that we have, how are we in the skilling platform going to move forward and be ourselves, put it this way, skill ready? Your views, Captain.
Thank you, Mr. Keku. As always, bringing up the rear, but definitely the most important, I would put it that way. We talked so much about paperless, etc., right? And we're already having the students have started it in right earnest. We are having a paperless examination going on for most of the students who are undergoing the BMS. I just have a small presentation. Bhavna, if you allow me to share the content, please.
Sure, sir. Just enabling you.
Can you see the screen, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I got a very small presentation. First is a little status update on the standards that we are creating. And yesterday, Mr. Ambadubey made a small mention about rationalized job roles. Yes, we are creating these rationalized job roles, as you can see. These are 10 job roles which would comprehensively cover the standards, occupational standards required for the cargo segment as well as the passenger segment. We saw during the COVID that personnel who were otherwise employed in the passenger side, whether in the airline or in the airports, they've all moved and started working for the cargo segment, which means multitasking is the norm rather than an exception. Therefore, we have created these rationalized job roles which comprehensively cover what would be needed for as an occupational standard for candidates to get qualified and become absolutely employable. And you can see from the timeline, we will be good to go by the end of this month. Now, coming to what we are doing otherwise, I think it's better I allow the students to talk.
I'm undertaking the BMS aviation services in air cargo operations fascinated by logistics. I'm modeling from a development. I take this degree as I feel like this is a perfect course for me, as I've always wanted to work in the aviation industry. This course is already taught me a lot about the aviation industry, the airport operations, and logistics management, and I hope to learn a lot more beyond that. Thank you.
So that was Sunidhi. a girl from Bombay who has joined the Sharan Baswa University and now pursuing the BMS Air Cargo Aviation Services.
From Sharan Baswa University, undergoing Bachelor's in Business Management, Aviation Services, and Air Cargo Services, facilitated by Logistics Center Skills Council.
We cannot hear these. Can we go forward?
3 years, we get the experience of.
Okay, possibly with the next one you'll hear that. These two students basically talked about why they joined this particular program, leaving all others. And a student coming all the way from Bombay to study in Bangalore is not a small thing, you know. But now these two students talked about why they joined. Now these two students now will say about how the conduct is going on in the Rajiv Gandhi National Aeronautical University, as well as the importance of apprenticeship.
My name is Subhi B.S. from Rajiv Gandhi National Aviation University, Amethi, UP, undergoing Bachelor in Management Studies in Aviation Service and Air Cargo course, facilitated by Logistics Sector Skill Council. After undergoing the course, from past 5 months, I can say that the course is designed as an amalgamation of management subjects, finance, logistics, and aviation industry subjects, which allows us to have a broader understanding of every aspect of the industry. It provides a vertical as well as horizontal knowledge about the industry. The subjects are being taught by industry experts that enables us to have professional insight of the industry and understand the course from the industry perspective.
So that Mrs. Vandana ma'am doesn't get over-elated that it's only all girls. Here is a boy who talks about the program.
My name is Ashish Giri from Rajiv Gandhi National Aviation University, undergoing Bachelor's in Management Studies in Aviation Services and Air Cargo, facilitated by Logistics Sector Skill Council. Our program is a 3-year apprenticeship embedded program with 12 months of apprenticeship with prominent aviation and air cargo companies. This will help us in practical application of a theoretical knowledge, which in turn will help us in building skills necessary for the industry. The apprenticeship training will enable us to be job ready as we graduate and use our skills and knowledge to be a successful professional. Moreover, the apprenticeship program comes with a stipend that will prove as a great financial aid for many students.
So we really do believe that this apprenticeship embedded Bachelor Management Studies in Air Cargo and Aviation Services is a sure pathway for productivity and sustainable human resource for the aviation sector. Thank you.
So my immediate question to Captain Ramanujam would be that if your courses on cargo control at airports or in ground handling or even off the airport, that is end to end, are certified, these are industry standards. Why does any employer at an airport, whether it's a ground handler or an airport terminal, still require a CEIV certification? Is that not a duplication of the requirements? Surely, if the skills that have been imparted at certification level is sufficient, then IATA should be recognizing this ab initio so that we do not have to waste time. India is not a one airport country. India is not a 10 airport country. We are moving to 200 airports. For us to look at calling IATA to certify each of our standards at each of the airports is going to be mind-bogglingly expensive.
You're absolutely right, ma'am. This is a point which I've raised also with the Special Secretary Logistics, but this is I suppose it applies across all segments of logistics, because the nations which got industrialized much before us, they started off the block much earlier than us, and therefore have set the rule book and therefore are directing the entire others lot to follow it. So, for example, you'll have a small organization in France, the Bureau International Containers, which gives a 11-digit number to the ISO containers, which controls the entire assignment of numbers to all the containers across the world. So why can't we do it? Similarly, if you have to inspect an ISO container, the inspector has to be certified by an agency in Singapore. Why not in India? So these are questions, larger questions, I think, which we need to take up and possibly arrive at international parity. You're absolutely right on that point, ma'am.
Can I add something, ma'am, very quickly on that subject?
Yeah,
Even if the
please.
cargo terminals or airports have the capability, as we were discussing in the beginning, the international import community, especially those based out of Europe or North America, they need an independent verification to certify the credibility of the cargo airports that are involved in processing pharma or perishables. Now, we are depending on GDPR. We talked about IATA certification. I think one way of solving it is maybe under Mr. Ramanujan. No, if we have an organization within the country that is ready to audit and certify, which will possibly be at the same level as IATA or other certifications, we actually solve it. So we actually take the responsibility of vetting it and certifying it ourselves. We make it cost effective. We also give the credibility to the certification. I think that's a way to solve it, actually.
I agree. I mean, I had at the back of my mind when I was asking all these questions, I was leading all the panelists up to that only. That when we have through IATA, they have training centers, the ATCs, etc., which they accept and they approve, that individual countries can have. I'm told India also, wow, wonders never cease, has one of these IATA certification centers, which is the Indian Aviation Academy. Should this Indian Aviation Academy tie up with the Logistics Sector Skill Council and ensure that the certification programs or the QPs that LSSC is defining are within the norms of the ATC that we have, etc., etc., then the CEIB should come automatically for organizations which are employing such certified employees at an airport throughout the value chain, for instance. So, I mean, we need to put in systems which can address continental size countries' needs, to put it in a simple way, rather than looking at it to see that, I asked this question also because, as I said at the very beginning, that for a Chennai airport and a Kolkata airport to have been RA3 certified, and also when Delhi and Mumbai and Hyderabad and Bangalore are all being done separately as well. For God's sake, what's happening to the rest of the country? We remain as secure. Our BCAS does not apply different standards to different airports. Why is Europe getting all twisted up on this issue of having to come to every one of our airports to certify them? It's not as though we wear multiple hats in our country. We would never be able to run a country of our proportions if we went so individualistic in terms of, or so intrusive in terms of how we are approving international level situations. And yes, the independent certification does not mean a foreign certification. It's high time we realize that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, ma'am. Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm just trying to reduce the burden on the shoulders of all our international agencies. I'm not attempting to do anything else. Okay, Keiko, over to you.
Or Bhavna? Bhavna, do we have on? Not sure.
Hello. Sorry, you're not audible. If you can You're breaking up, sorry.
Okay, I've lost the connection. Bhavna, are you still there? I don't know. So let me just give you a moment. Ma'am, very quickly.
That's the things you'd like to touch upon.
Thank you
So,
for,
ma'am,
for
okay.
bringing you those points during this.
Yes, sir.
So can't hear. Am I clear?
Now you are clear, Keku.
Thank you. Intel delivered that dispute and
Sir, just
over the past years, and that also I think is clear. So we had in the last year or so some very interesting projects like the Lifeline done, the vaccine, etc. Just for us, for the world to see it. Given that this was, as I would say, a year of cargo, your take on why we haven't crossed the 32-day mark for India as a whole. No point of time was cargo a handicap with any issue. We were probably the only people who had a free run in the aviation industry. So we are becoming 100 new with facts like the passenger to freighter conversion, going for a the big was the availability of cargo per se to get on board our flights. But what would be 3 points that we haven't focused on as a team in the country, and what are the key points that would say are the ones that to focus on? I know we have taken a from as well, but from your perspective, future. Ma'am, over to you.
Bhavna?
So, are you asking me to first say what my three? Because your voice was cutting, was not very clear. Anyway, let me say that for me, what is important going forward is.
Not clear.
Huh? Okay. For me, what is very important going forward is that there is no, as I said, replacement for digital. And yes, although I did try to get some more thoughts going on how global should the platform be. Should it be spatially global? Should it be holistic in covering different modes of transportation? Should it have within its elements booking portals and all other players on the same platform, or should it be a sum of fragments, that is where an airline has its own portal, a freight forwarder has its own network, etc., etc., that is within the value chain? Should it be one, or should it be fragmented, sum of fragments? So these three options to me still remain open. and we would, I think, need to discuss them. We have no option but to look at moving fast on this issue, because drones are going to become a reality for us. As I said, some of the other multimodal systems which we've never worked with, we are comfortable with the road, but we need to work with waterways, we need to work with the sea as well, and the rail, of course, as well, for our domestic shipments at least, and rail going forward at the other end as well, as I said. So we have to look at multimodality at origin and destination. Second takeaway is that for market development, for growth of India's air cargo, and for us to meet the aspirations not only of the Indian producer, but also the consumers who are happy to import and to also consume products which are produced across the world. India is not a closed market in any sense of the term. So for meeting their aspirations, cargo has to grow. And to grow, investment of the right sort is needed. Physical investment in human infrastructure is needed. And I'm sure that Captain Ramanujam has it all well in hand when he's speaking about the innovations that we are doing in our skilling platforms or policies for going forward. In market development, controlling costs remains an essential, and I'm happy to hear from Cyrus that air cargo logistic costs are a fraction of what might be an overall cost, though I think we need to hone down on that a little bit as well. I think much better way to control costs is to have a far more robust competitiveness in the regime that exists, rather than having regulatory controls on prices or on quantities. We have no option in this rubric but to reach out to new markets, look at our regions, the hinterland, which have so far not been addressed by my dear freight forwarders here as well. I would urge you to go to the tier 2, tier 3 towns as well and try to build a far more important and sustainable access to the supplies from there as well, or even their consumer needs to service them. We have no option but to innovate and to be flexible in how we are looking at the growth of air cargo. And finally, the third point, which I had hinted towards, which was how do our stakeholders interface and collaborate with their partners overseas. That to me is a big challenge. I think that in COVID, under the lockdown conditions, as an air cargo fraternity, we did very well in the domestic arena. I think the tie-ups, not just between the airlines, the airports through digital freight corridors, the tie-ups with, as I was saying, with multimodal players in other countries or of theirs with us in India. These are some areas that we need to see how we can, as the third largest aviation market, play a more befitting role in the global growth of air cargo. It's not just about India's growth. If the world's third largest aviation market is, in terms of sheer numbers, such a dismal player, then clearly something is amiss in how the India-related synergies with themselves are being unleashed. And I think that's an issue that we may address. I think for me, these are the three big takeaways for going forward in our policy and planning. And also, I would say, for the business resurgence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Given the time constraint that we have, I'm not sure we could take in questions, but what I'd like to do with my panelists would be, in a minute or two, your top 3 initiatives that you would like to see go forward. Let me start that with Stephen, from your side. In your perspective, the top 3 initiatives you would like to take to have this business grow.
Well, it's difficult to be original, but it would be, yeah, go for digitization and especially partnerships. It was said that that all these cargo communities is like islands. I think the whole idea is if we all get our islands right and together, and then we connect our islands later, that's a lot easier than starting to do everything all together at the same time. So yes, those are local initiatives, but yes, they are important, and let's connect them later. So I really think it is important to get it right on a local level first, and then expand it through cooperations and by using standards. And coming back to standards, a lot of attention has been given to CIV. CIV is not an obligation. It is a standard that is set, that is used by companies to set out, but we as an airport chose not to go for an airport CIV. We decided if members of our cargo community want to go there, we support them. And we do support standards, but we don't support spending money on things that you don't really need. And from my experience, I learned that pharmaceutical shippers, they still audit every trade lane they use, CIV standardized or not. So I'm not saying it is not a good thing, but I'm also not saying that is an absolute condition to get in on the pharma or even on the vaccines transportations. It is just something that can help you, but no more than that. So that's one remark that I wanted to make that has nothing to do with these 3 points. So let's come back to cooperation, to make sure it works well locally, and then connect it globally. I think that's the main takeaways going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Ramesh, your side, please.
Thank you, Keku, for lack of time, and also to avoid the repetition of points that Stephen and Bam already have covered. I do agree the top level issues such as digitization and development of infrastructure, depending on what the airport needs, are 2 definitely important points for me. But apart from that, as an airport operator, the passion, energy, and dedication that I found in the cargo terminals that we manage in terms of managing the vaccine logistics in the last 2 months or so is something that really personally motivated me. I think one of the challenges for the airport operator is to make sure that the dedication and passion that we found in the last couple of weeks in terms of managing these shipments is continued and sustained, and also exhibit the same passion in terms of managing all the shipments, not just for vaccine. I think if you have that game in place, there is no way that we can actually avoid us becoming #1 cargo operations in the world. So that would be my top priority in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. Mr. Keshav?
Yeah, I think collaboration being the topmost. We have to collaborate with each other rather than be working in our own silos, because that becomes very difficult, and then it's multiplicity, like I've said earlier. whether it is digital collaboration or whether it is physical collaboration in any way, even on the ground, it has to be a one voice. Training, ma'am spoke of CEIV, I speak of training. Why is it that air cargo handles a lot of sensitive goods, whether it's DGR goods, temperature control, time sensitive goods? Why is it that the most recognized training can only be an IATA accredited training? So there's got to be some kind of collaboration there in terms of training, because there are many institutes which do this, and why is it that those institutes cannot be acceptable to our industry partners? And I think basically, to my mind, going ahead, we would have to look at these few factors of collaboration. Digitalization is, of course, what we've spoken about all along. It cannot be fragmented digitalization. If we have some community platform, if I know, for example, that I'm going to send my truck to the cargo complex at such and such a time, I know it will get unloaded. So transparency in terms of setting parameters. I can't say that today, unfortunately, that my truck would be back in my warehouse, duly unloaded in A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. It's not possible. It depends on what kind of congestion there is. So the setting of parameters perhaps could also help in going ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Keshav. Ivo?
Yeah, thank you very much. I keep it short. Also, I appreciate the open comments received here, and I would love to see this moving forward in the next weeks and months to come. I also thanks again, Vipinji, for bringing me into this panel here. And from my point of view, the main focus for us is on open policies, having the opportunity also here to offer the capacity in the markets and this flexibility part, right? So this is, I think, a very big challenge for us, how to manage this and offer the right capacity at the right time. And the term of digitalization, I think mentioned already by all previous colleagues here, for us, very, very clear the ambition, be paperless, the earlier the better, and really look at the whole chain, not only at specific documents, and then drive this to 90% or so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Max, from your side.
Thank you for the word. Thank you also for having me on the panel as well. To keep it short, also from my side, having the collaboration at an airport helps you very much to get a community system running. But starting from this running cargo community system at one local airport, it will be important to have a global initiative on common interfaces, not only focus on digital freight corridors that are locked in between two ends, two airports, one supply chain, that needs more kind of an interoperational platform that connects each different cargo community systems to get to a paperless world in the future.
Thank you, Max. Cyrus? Cyrus, I think you're on mute.
Okay, I'll make it short also. ACFI, from the training point of view, ACFI is training almost 100 people every month. Keku, you are very much instrumental in the whole organizing of these camps, and all are done on offline. Number two is that surely we will all agree on this panel, and I'm sure everybody else is also agreeing. Suddenly digital has become hot topic. Amar More, good to hear from you. All the digital initiatives, but yes, the only now is not the time to say no to paper. Otherwise, in the next 30 years, you're going to talk of the same thing. Just say no to paper. Everybody, please say no. That's all. Ivo, I know you're smiling. That's it. Simple message.
All right. Thank you, Cyrus. Captain, from your side.
We're already working with ACFI in many initiatives. I request industry to take up apprenticeship in a big way. This is a win-win for all. Request industry to come forward and set up industry-led training centers such as the Cargo Academy, which Stephen spoke about, and request from the government strive for international parity. Thank you of all our training programs.
Thank you. Saurabh, from your side?
So, Keku, as our air cargo industry, from an industry perspective, as we mature mid to long term, we will have to focus on three things, I feel. First would be handling transformation, because what we all do as part of the value chain, that activities will undergo changes. You know, what customer does at what we do and what the FF does. So we'll have to manage the transformation part. It's very important, something also linked to what Vanda madam just said. The second part is also in terms of training or skilling. I think we should be talking about new training or skilling, because we talk about 3 times growth in volume, say 3.5 to 10 plus. We will require twice the current manpower, but the training required would be slightly different because of all the things that we discussed. Just to be keeping it short. And third thing is. I think Mr. Tanas spoke about, individual islands, which is fairly, open and integrated, but we will have to move towards common platform and more importantly, open marketplace. I think it is still not there. When we talk about customers, when we talk about freight forwarder, when we talk about airlines, this is important. This is also something which was discussed, common platform and open marketplace. That we have to prepare and adopt, and it is different from what it requires mindset change as well. It's slightly more than what technology can offer. So these are the 3 areas we'll have to focus.
Thanks. Amar, from your side, and I'm still holding you onto the date.
Okay, I have very simple 3 priorities. Connect the community digitally, connect the community digitally, connect the community digitally. That's it.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm afraid I think I'm overshot the time, not good as a standard for our industry. We like to have benchmark OTPs in all that we do. So I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your Saturday morning for the very lively discussion. I hope you have enjoyed and have taken a few takeaways from this as much as I have. If there is any other comments I would like to make now, or if not, I'd like to hand it over back to Bhavna ji to close this meeting.
Again, reiterating what you said, sir, a big thank you to everyone for taking our time. May I request Vipin Vora, sir, to please propose the formal vote of thanks and share his thoughts as well. Thank you.
It is my privilege to propose the formal vote of thanks for this mega second day, 7th edition of our PhD Global Aviation and Air Cargo Summit 2021. Themed Aviation, Air Cargo Industry New Growth Blueprint and Business Resurgent Parameters. Today, the discussion was focused on air cargo sustainability initiatives for future. We would like to express our sincere gratitude on behalf of PhD Chamber to Mrs. Vandana Agarwal, Senior Economic Advisor, Ministry of Civil Aviation, for being gracing today's discussions. Her presence and constant deep support always adds deeper value to our endeavors, and we look forward to her continued support. We are also grateful to our eminent panelists, Mr. Keshav Thana, Chairman, FIADA Airfreight Institute, Mr. Ivo Sihan, Director Sales and Handling Lufthansa Cargo, although I gave him very short notice, but thanks for, Ivo, for joining us today. Mr. Steven, VP Commercial at Leach Airport. Mr. Ramesh Mamidala, Chief Cargo Development Officer, Adani Airports. Mr. Max Philipp, Vice President Cargo Development, Fraport AG Germany. Mr. Saurabh Kumar, CEO, GHA IAL Cargo. And Mr. Amar More, Director, Kale Logistic. Captain T.S. Ramanunjam, Chief Executive Officer, Logistics Sector Council, and of course, my friend Cyrus Gazda, Cyrus Katigara, Gina, my old friend. Sorry, sorry, Cyrus, for being here today. We are really grateful to our eminent panelists for their presence, and the enriching perspectives shared by all have truly been enlightening and informative in nature. I would also like to thank especially to Ms. Vandana Agrawal and the entire team of Ministry of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Logistics, and all Indian flag carriers like Air India, SpiceJet, Indigo, GoAir, along with all international carriers who had really helped Indian exim trade kept moving during this last year of a very difficult time which we all faced. I remember even, during those April, May days when there was, curfew all over, whenever we had a problem, we were even, talking to Madam Vandana at 12 o'clock in the night, and she used to solve our problem. Thanks to you, Madam. We really are grateful that you kept the things moving. And, especially I can tell you about 5 years back or 10 years back or 20 years back, whenever we used to attend any conferences or personal, things, there was not even one word mentioned about cargo. In every speeches, they were always talking about passengers and nothing else. And a lot of times I had to say, yeah, cargo also plays an important role in that. And I'm really grateful to you that in the last 3 years or 4 years, everybody has started cargo first, then passengers. I'm really grateful, that you have changed the whole cargo scene in India, especially. Worldwide, people were recognizing, cargo, but in India, after, you have taken over, you have really, really helped the cargo industry. And now we feel proud to be in cargo. Previously, we said, passenger wale cargo is treated like a stepchild treatment. And today we say, we are the main child and passenger is the, other child, stepchild. So thanks a lot once again. We're also grateful to all the terminal operators who have really gone out of the way to help the trade to move their cargo on time, especially last year and even now. Madam, we look forward to more interactions with you, all the Ministry of Civil Aviation, with a view to promoting greater involvement in the road to recovery post the pandemic. We also express our sincere thanks to all the ambassadors from various countries, diplomats, and distinguished guests from the industry for their presence, which has definitely added further value to our webinar. With a heartfelt gratitude to our sincere thanks to our sponsors, Chalabi Aviation, AAI Cargo Logistic and Allied Services Company, AAI Class, GMR Group, Boeing India, Continental Carriers, Kale Logistic, and Logistics Skill Council. The need of the hour is to disseminate as much information as possible about the new initiative and work in collaboration with all the stakeholders. We at PhD Chambers assure you of our commitment towards the same and look forward to working closely with the governments, institutions, and all the stakeholders of the aviation and air cargo industry together. And before I, close, of course, I'm not going to touch AFS today. There are a few other points I'm not going to touch. Today I said I will not speak anything about AFS. There are 2-3 issues which I would like to, give it to you to think about it. One is the main, the issue is, on the ECGC, export credit guarantee, thing on the freight forwarders in the service industry. Now, the way the freight rates are going up, and especially the risk of the freight forwarders when they are offering credit to foreign agents, is increasing every day. Now, I had a discussion with ECGC because they are the ones who cover, exporters' risk. We as freight forwarders also earn a lot of foreign exchange and bring it to the country. But if the agents over there in outside India, if they go bankrupt or anything, there is no policy available to an Indian agent where we can cover our risk on our foreign exchange exposures, outside India. So if this can be taken up with the, ECGC, which is the government's body, to cover the export credit guarantee, I'll be really grateful. Now, the other second thing which I would like to mention here is on the SCIS import license to freight forwarders on their foreign exchange earnings. That is very, very important. There were, licenses issued to most of the freight forwarders, because we also have to invest in a lot of things, like forklifts, other things. And if we can get this SEIS, there is a policy in the government that service industry can avail this import license. But unfortunately, this is not happening. And people who have got import licenses, they were all being asked questions by the DRI and all, and most of the agents have surrendered those. And if that can also be looked into, that's the second point which I would like to cover here. The third point is the last point of mine is that there has to be some rule which needs to be implemented at all the airports, because what happens is that if somebody is changing this computer system, like what happened this week, this week, on Monday or Tuesday, CSC changed their IT system. Now the messages were not exchanged between customs and them. So what had happened? The whole cargo got blocked and the flights went empty. Now, at this time, if the flight goes empty, we lose everything. People will, let you know on this. That is very, very important. At least they should tell us that 5 days in advance or 3 days in advance that they are going to do this, and they should do it on a weekend or something like that, not on a weekdays, because these days the shipments are so crucial that they should not hurt the working of at the airports. So that is very important. This all the departments, whether it's terminal operators or anybody, or even in customs, if they are going to change adding some module into it, they should give sufficient notice to the trade that, okay, day after tomorrow, this is going to happen. And, please don't plan this way. The freight forwarders, they don't bring the cargo. The airline, they should also plan that way. So this is how it should be done. So with these three things, if you can take it up on behalf of the trade, I'll be really grateful to you. So with these words, I once again thank all the eminent dignitaries and all the distinguished participants for their presence. Thank you very much. I really, I must say that even although I'm in the trade for 45 years, I really enjoy listening all the speakers today. Thank you. Thank you. And, for the contribution, the Bhavna, would you like to, this awards things for the contribution, do you want to do it now or what? How do you want to do it? Can you take it up from here? Bhavna?
I think her connection has... I think Bhavna's connection has...
So we did it in the inaugural.
See, for the contribution in industry, we would like to acknowledge. Yeah, Bhavna, tell me. Tell us.
One second.
Speak.
Sir, thank you so much. Sir, thank you to everybody and all students.
I think there's a problem.
Thank you so much, everybody, for all your
thank you so much.
And for
thank you.
So,
thank you.
We look
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I love making provocative remarks. So let's stay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.